Pleasure to bring this young artist up. Yeah. Charlotte-based Jaren Strom. Give him a warm welcome.
With dollar bills and record deals, I'm seeing the appeal, but I'm reaching for even more. Something I can leave. No, I'm not doing this for me, 'cause I'm leaving a legacy. Yeah, legacy. Oh, oh, yeah. Well, I'm just freestyling now. There's no more words to this song, so I'll just keep mumbling along. Why? You ask me why. I'm just trying to be creative in the morning. Sorry. Thank you so much.
Jess George. Okay, here we go. Jess George has spent most of her career in the nonprofit sector, most recently as the executive director of the Latin American Coalition. After 11 years with the coalition, she left to join Google Fiber as their community impact manager, where she works with community leaders, organizations, and neighborhoods to address issues of access, opportunity, and digital inclusion. I'll also add to that she's been living in Charlotte for 16 years, I believe. Where is she? Oh, there you are. Is that right? 16 years? She lives in Plaza Midwood with her family. You have enviable red hair, I'm told. And she's whip smart. The second I first talked to her, I'm like, whoa, this is like no-brainer. Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to hear her talk. So, ladies and gentlemen, to speak on the global theme of language here, please welcome Charlotte's own Jess George.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Thank you for the incredible energy in the room. I had people come up to me beforehand and say, "Are you the speaker? We just want to give you good vibes." I thought, all right, this is going to be a great morning. So, as Matt said, my name is Jess George. And I have to say it that way, Jess George, with the pause, because I'm a fast talker. And if I say it too quickly, people don't learn my name or they pronounce it incorrectly. And we did a little name tag icebreaker this morning, and I wanted to know, each one of you, what's your favorite word? And I have heard a theory that I really like, that everyone's favorite word is actually their own name pronounced correctly. And there is nothing worse than hearing your name when someone bungles it. So, maybe some of you have two of your favorite words on your name tag. So, in a way, I got to choose my name because when I got married, I took my husband's last name, George. And I did this because I thought the name Jess George sounded like a girl detective. The intrepid Jess George. See, when I was a child, my greatest aspiration was to be a girl detective like Nancy Drew. When I was 4 years old, my mother read me my very first Nancy Drew book, and I was hooked. And in the next few years, I read all of them, some of them twice. I pored over the illustrations, I reread thrilling passages, and I learned how to talk like a girl detective. And I will teach you all today. So for those of you who are uninitiated in the Nancy Drew canon, if you will, do not worry, I've got you covered because every single book goes something like this. Nancy Drew, a teenage sleuth living in River Heights, unknown state, learns of a mystery, receives an anonymous threatening note telling her to keep off the case or else. She eats a light lunch or delightful picnic prepared for her by her housekeeper, Hannah Gruen. She puts on some slacks, jumps in her blue convertible roadster, goes to an abandoned mansion, finds a gang's hideout, is kidnapped, escapes, finds a hidden passageway, and cracks the case that has been befuddling the authorities. You can see why young people like me loved the daring, dauntless, whip-smart Nancy Drew. Nancy Drew didn't ask permission, and she didn't beg forgiveness. Ruth Bader Ginsburg joked that Nancy Drew was her hero because she was, quote, a girl out there doing her work and dominating her boyfriend. I love Nancy Drew because she dared to be the hero of her own life. Now, the small town in central New York that I grew up in didn't have any mysteries, but believe me, I looked for them. Who made these tracks in the snow? Where did this tire track come from? Perhaps I can find the wheel that will match its imprint. See, I just wanted the opportunity to develop my own Nancy Drew skill set. In fact, I would go into a room, and if there was like a wall of books, I would sneak over to them and run my finger along the wall, hoping to find the fake book that would reveal a hidden staircase. And I really believed that even the flimsiest fake wood paneling just might reveal a passageway if I just touched the right panel in the wood. And so, unfortunately, there were no mysteries, but I kept looking. And I was really inspired because Nancy Drew really was my hero, and I wanted to build up these sleuthing skills that she had. She could fix her own car. She could pick a lock. She could decipher a code, and she was never intimidated by bullies. And this is what I aspired to be like. Now, my town didn't have mysteries, but we did have bullies. And I will confess that when I reflect on my childhood, my proudest moments are the moments when I stood up to bullies for myself and for others. And I am most ashamed of the times when I was too afraid to. So I'll tell you a quick story. When I was 5 years old, these 3 neighborhood boys who were older than me, including the neighborhood bully that I was the most terrified of, locked me and my friend Matthew in a barn. And they threatened us and they scared us, and then they got bored and they left, and no one was hurt. But by the time I got home, I was furious. And my mother, to her credit, said to me, well, what are you gonna do about it? And so I got out the phone book and I looked up all of the boys' names and their phone numbers, and I called each one of them. And first I called Jesse, because he was the youngest and that seemed like the easiest lift. And I get his mom on the phone, and I think at this point, mothers have talked to mothers, punishments have been doled out. She puts Jesse on the phone, who sobs an apology to me. And then I call Peter, and this one is also pretty easy because Peter, I'm friends with his younger sister, I know his family, and I get a relatively earnest apology from him. But truth be told, I'm really just putting off the phone call I am terrified to make. And that is the phone call to John Moore, who is the oldest, the biggest, and the meanest of the 3 boys. Now, John Moore isn't a jewel thief or a kidnapper. He's not a bad guy from a Nancy Drew book, but he's my villain, and I am scared. And so, and I remember this like it was yesterday, like picking up the phone and dialing the number. Look at my rotary dial. There you go. Dialing the number, and his mom picking up the phone, and I'm using my best girl detective voice, Mrs. Moore, do you know what your son has done? And she says, yes, I'm aware. Would you like me to put John on the phone? And so I take a deep breath, and I summon all of my courage, and I say, no, thank you, and I slam down the phone. So, although I am imperfect at it, I believe that holding bullies accountable is some of the hardest and the most important work that we can do, especially as adults, when those bullies can become villains. And this belief has really informed my career. Up until 9 months ago when I joined Google Fiber, my entire career has been in the nonprofit sector. And as Matt said, most recently, I worked for the Latin American Coalition, which is North Carolina's largest immigrant rights organization. And as you can imagine, social justice issues are just about as close as one can get to being like a professional bully confronter. So for example, in November of 2012, the KKK decided to organize a rally right here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we at the Latin American Coalition, after a lot of thought, decided that we were going to organize a counter-protest. And there were community leaders who were against this, and they called me and gravely asked me to not do that, to stay silent. And I think they had very legitimate concerns about our safety. Because, Jess George, these aren't bullies. These are the real villains. But we couldn't stay silent. Not in our town, not on our watch. And so we organized a very special kind of counter-protest. We organized a clown protest. So if you can, imagine 100 clowns, curly wigs, full makeup, red noses, floppy shoes, noisemakers, surrounding 40 men in sheets and pointy hats. And the message the clown brings is this. Our message is, we're dressed like clowns, but you're the ones who look foolish. And Nancy Drew would have been proud because that day, the villains lost. And that is your first lesson in how to talk like a girl detective. Use your voice to stand up to bullies and villains. But daring do can only get a girl detective so far. And what I love about what we did with the clown protest is we used the language of love and humor and laughter to undermine hate and fear. But let's be honest, in our day-to-day lives, the villains are rarely so obvious. They're not wearing a sheet and a pointy hat, so let us know. And the language of hate and fear is often much more insidious. As a child, the language of Nancy Drew, the vocabulary, was really intriguing to me. And that is why I want you all to be able to develop your girl detective language. Now, for example, I loved reading in Nancy Drew books the way she always had a hunch about something, the way she spent time with her chums, Bess and George. And I loved learning new words like eavesdropper. I've since become one. And bungalow. I currently live in one. And imposter. I sometimes feel like one. But I also love to learn really great sleuthing words like manuscript and cipher, and my very favorite Nancy Drew word of all time, which I challenge you to find in any other book, and this word is Titian. Titian refers to the lovely red gold of Nancy Drew's hair. Now, before I get carried away and talk how great Nancy Drew is, let me pump the brakes on this little blue roadster. Because, my friends, Nancy Drew, like all of our heroes, is problematic. It's not surprising that the all-white, ostensibly straight, cisgendered cast of Nancy Drew never changed. But what did change was the language. In particular, the dated and frankly offensive language in some of the early editions. And over the years, Nancy Drew's publishers revised the book, removing, among other things, offensive Jewish and immigrant stereotypes, and words like colored and Negro. And I shudder just to stand in front of you and say those words out loud, because I know that those are words that have been used to deny justice, and are used to deny justice and humanity to whole groups of individuals. And that is why it is so troubling to me today that so many people hold on to words and symbols when they know that they create fear and pain for thousands, if not millions, of people. As you can imagine, this problem of people holding on to these words and actually really rejecting the legitimate requests to stop using that word or stop using that image, dismissing those requests as, censorship or political correctness. This is something that I experienced a lot at the Latin American Coalition. And one of the ways in which we experienced this was right before our clown rally. We launched a national campaign that we were a part of called the Drop the I Word campaign. And this was a part of us asking local media to not use the word illegal when talking about undocumented immigrants. And so young immigrant people, leaders, who happen to be my contemporary real-life heroes, both documented and not, met with the leaders of print, TV, radio, media, and explained, the word illegal, when you talk about a human being, is demeaning. It's offensive. It's inaccurate. It's not neutral. In short, it's bad journalism. And it offends some of the members of your intended audience. You should stop using it. And this is actually something Charlotte should be really proud of, because the vast majority of the leaders in the media got it. They got it. They absolutely said, you are right. Thank you for sharing. We will drop it. I remember meeting with the manager of one of the local TV stations who told the young people, thank you. Thank you for educating me. I didn't know. It was that simple. But not everyone agreed. And there was one local newspaper who decided that they had the right to use that word no matter how many people it offended. And it wasn't until several years later when the Associated Press agreed with us and formally dropped the word from their handbook that this newspaper finally decided to stop using it. They were on the wrong side of history. And look, I get it. It is hard to be told that you've offended someone. And it's hard to change your behavior and your actions. But it's never too late to change your language, to be kind, and to stay relevant. And this is what Nancy Drew books have done over the years. Nancy Drew books have continued to evolve their vocabulary and change their words in order to stay on the right side of history, or at least catch up. And on top of that, to stay relevant. And this is how they've been able to inspire generation upon generation of young people. And so this is your second lesson in talking like a girl detective. Evolve your language and your words so you can continue to do good in the world. So speaking of doing good, I look around this room of creators and innovators, thinkers and disruptors, and I wonder about the stories and the journeys that brought you here today. I wonder about the bullies and the villains that you faced along the way, and I wonder about the ways in which you've grown and changed even when it made you uncomfortable. But mostly I wonder about who gave you permission, who made space for you, who took barriers out of your way to let you do the remarkable work that you do. Maybe it was a civil rights leader that fought for access and justice. Maybe it was a mentor that invested in you. Maybe it was a character in a fictional book that gave you the courage to imagine yourself doing something daring. And like I said earlier, Nancy Drew didn't ask permission. She didn't. But she gave me permission. See, I had to see myself as a girl detective before I could see myself as a detective. And it is in this way that she was able to inspire me and thousands of other young people to imagine being the hero in our own lives. So just this past spring, after 11 wonderful years at the Coalition, I left to be the Community Impact Manager with Google Fiber. And we are building something extraordinary and remarkable. We're building 21st century gigabit speed internet infrastructure across the entire city. This is extraordinary, and it is hard because this is the single largest infrastructure project in the history of our city. So future-proofed infrastructure and super fast internet speeds, these are exciting. But what I'm really interested in knowing is what we're going to do about it. And I believe that the people in this very room will help to write this story. The inventors, the scientists, the coders, the artists, the intrepid explorers, like the girl detectives before you, will be the ones to just tackle the world's biggest problems and solve them with this brand new tool. But you can't do it alone. And there are other people we need to invite with us. Today, roughly 28% of Charlotte's households don't even have internet in the home. That means they don't have basic access to basic information. That means no searching for jobs online. That means not communicating with loved ones using the internet. This means no applying to college, searching for scholarships, or even doing your homework at home for 60,000 households. And this is part of a bigger problem. Most of you probably know about the economic mobility studies that were done in this about the city, and it ranked Charlotte last among the metros in this country in economic mobility. So broken down, that means if you're born poor in Charlotte, you stay poor in Charlotte. And that is a crime. But it's one we can solve. My charge as Community Impact Manager with Google Fiber is to work in digitally divided communities to make sure that we are, with nonprofits and community leaders, to make sure that we are bridging the digital divide and creating digital inclusion programming. This means making sure folks have access to affordable internet access in their home, making sure they have a device, and making sure they know how to use it. And we believe that by bridging the digital divide in our community, we will be able to remove barriers, to give people access to unlimited resources, and, I hope, let people be the heroes in their own life. And so this is the third lesson in how to talk like a girl detective. Be the hero of your own story, but also remove barriers and make space so that others can do the same. So what do I leave you with? When you go about your day and someone asks you about the speaker at Creative Mornings, I would hate for you to say, oh, I don't know, I just listened to some self-righteous do-gooder with impossibly cool glasses and Titian hair. Instead, I would prefer if you said, I learned how to talk like a girl detective. Do you want me to teach you? And then your friend's like, really? That's so cool. Yes, teach me. And then you'd say, okay, it's really simple. There are 3 steps to being a girl detective and to talking like one. Step 1, call out. Use your voice for good. Stand up to bullies and villains. Speak truth to power. And if you are holding a bully accountable for his or her bad behavior, don't hang up the phone. You will always regret it. Step 2, be called in. Evolve your language, be open to getting feedback from people, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Be on the right side of history and learn people's names and pronounce them correctly. And step 3, be called on. Be an uncommon hero. Don't ask permission. Remove limitations from yourself and from others, because if there is a mysterious crime in this city that needs to be solved, you might just be the girl detective to crack the case. Thank you.